David, we ready? All right, let's come to order. This is the January 27th, 3 o'clock docket for the Municipal and Zoning Appeals Board of Baltimore City. I'd like to welcome you all here. Before we start, there's a few preliminary matters. As a lot of you know, and if you don't know, I will tell you, these proceedings are being recorded for TV broadcast, and there's several cameras up here and 2 up here. So we ask you to turn off cell phones and pagers and buzzers and anything else that makes a noise, because not only does it impact the recordings, it also disrupts the court reporter who is making a record of these proceedings here. The way this will work today is when I call your case number, the appellant will stand to my left, and the appellee, opposition, if any, will stand to my right. The procedure will be that the appellant will start, the appellant will describe his or her case, the opposition then will have an opportunity to state why they're opposed, and the appellant will finish it with a closing statement. We will reach a decision on most of these cases, if not all of these cases today, and we vote at the end of the day. You are perfectly welcome to stay and listen to our deliberations and get a decision then. Or if you'd like to leave, which most people do, you can call tomorrow and get our decision. And I'll give you the number. The number is 410-396-4301. And I'm going to repeat that. It's 410-396-4301. We're generally going to call the cases as they appear on the docket that's taped to the door outside, but we've got a couple of preliminary matters I want to first start with. There are several cases here today for which there are people here in opposition, and we've found that sometimes when people have the opportunity to talk, whatever opposition there is sometimes goes away because the people can reach an agreement. So for those cases for which there's opposition, I'm going to call your case number. You don't have to come up, just stand up, and then I'll see if you guys have the willingness to talk. First case is 2014-527, 2305 Pressbury Street. Are you in opposition?
Yes.
Or you're the appellants? Have you guys had a chance to talk?
No.
Would you like to? Please, you can take the opportunity, and when you come back in, by that time, we'll call your case. And you can, if you actually, just go outside in the hallway. The next case where there's opposition is 2014-568, 3035 East Baltimore Street. You're the appellants? You're the opposition? You're the appellant. Have you guys had a chance to talk? No. Would you like to? Please take the opportunity. Next case is 2014-580, 1-3 and 5 East Lexington Street and 115 North Charles Street.
The opposition, I believe, is out in the hall. We had an opportunity to speak a little bit ago. I don't think any further discussion will be helpful.
Okay, thank you. Next case where there's opposition is 2014-589, 1 Light Street. Are they outside?
They're out in the hallway, the appellant.
Okay, good. All right, next we have another preliminary matter, which is a posting matter, 2014-571, 201 South Ann Street and 1805 East Pratt Street. Gina Campbell. We'll call it again. 201 South Ann Street and 1805 East Pratt Street. Gina Campbell. You're opposed to it? Okay. We have, in that case, there's a posting issue. And I'm going to ask Mr. Tanner to describe the problem with the posting.
The required sign was not posted on the property.
Okay. We will contact her and tell her that, but this hearing is not going forward today.
Does that mean they won't get the zoning?
No, that does not mean that. It just means that procedurally, they didn't post a sign properly, and we're not going to proceed with the hearing with a bad posting. They have to start the posting process all over again.
So it's not just being postponed, they have to start over again?
The posting process, yes.
We will notify, you have your information, we will notify you if and when it gets ready.
All right, next, I'm going to call cases for what we call our consent docket. These are cases for which we have sufficient information in the files to approve your appeals. So I'm going to call a number of cases. I would ask you to line up to my left in the order that I call you. First case is 2014-543, 909 West Barry Street. Next is 2014-551, 3446 Chestnut Avenue. Next case, 2014-561, 515 North Washington Street. 2014-562, 2515 St. Paul Street. Next case, 2014-563, 5412 to 5414 Park Heights Avenue. Next case, 2014-565, 6210 Park Heights Avenue. 2014-566, 4405 Fleet Street. 2014-567, 521 South Curley Street. 2014-569, 935 South Bolden Street. Next is 2014-574, 922 to 924 South Streeper Street. 2014-576, 2307, 2309, and 2311 East Fairmont Avenue. And finally, 2014-594, 1725 Bolton Street. If I can get everyone to be sworn in by the court reporter, we'll do it all at one time.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, first case, 2014-543, 909 West Barry Street, Nate Prettle. Just state your name for the record, Mr. Prettle.
Nate Prettle.
This is to consolidate lots, construct two-story addition, used as two dwelling units with lower rear garage and first floor commercial. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do we have any staff reports? Five 43.
We have a report from the Department of Planning that was read into the record previously. Department of Planning recommends approval of this appeal conditioned upon the discontinuance of use of the consolidated property for a pawn shop and check cashing agency. I believe the applicant has agreed not to use it for this.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Prettle, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, not this time.
Zoning Board has sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, David.
2014-551, 3446 Chestnut Avenue, Don and Renee Gorman. Okay, there's a lot of Dons and a lot of Renees. To use first floor of the premises as a bakery, including outdoor table service. Do you have any staff reports?
We have planning report. We also have a number of letters from the community in support.
Okay.
And Mr. Henry can.
Mr. Henry, if you could just summarize those letters very quickly.
We have letters from the Hamden Village Merchants Association and the Hamden Community Council. They indicate that they have met with the applicant, that they support and welcome the proposal. We also have received 13 individual letters of support from community folks and 65 plus signatures, a petition indicating that they support the request.
Great, thank you. And I forgot, did you state your names for the record, please?
Renee Foreman.
Any staff reports?
Yes, thank you. Martin French for the Baltimore City Department of Planning. The department recommends approval of this appeal, subject to these conditions. A minimum of 6 feet of the sidewalk must remain clear and unobstructed for pedestrian use. The capacity of the outdoor seating area will be not more than 4 tables and 16 patrons. The tables will be limited to those that can seat 4 patrons and are to be kept against the wall of the building. There will be no outdoor bar, outdoor music, jukebox, or other form of entertainment, and all patrons must be seated for dining and served by waitstaff. Thank you.
Thank you. Are those conditions acceptable to you? Great. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Great. Zoning Board has sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next case, 2014-561, 515 North Washington Street, Lisa Junker. This is to construct a 3-story rear addition with a rooftop deck retaining and incorporating the existing rear garages. Would you state your name for the record, please? Okay. Staff reports?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Anything you'd like to add?
We forwarded via email letters from surrounding property owners up and down the 500 block in support of. Okay.
All right, great.
You don't want more paper?
We have enough paper and we have sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
2414-562, 2515 St. Paul Street. Benedict Frederick.
I am Benedict Frederick.
Thank you very much. Any staff reports?
Yes, we have a letter from the Charles Village Land Use Council indicating that they support this request, and they applaud Mr. Frederick's interest in reestablishing the proper zoning for this property. And planning has a report.
Planning Department recommends approval of this application. Thank you.
And this application is to house 2 dwelling units and an office?
Yes, that's correct.
Correct. Anything you'd like to add? Zoning Board has sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you. 2014-563, 5412 to 14 Park Heights Avenue. Andre Tarasov. Did I pronounce that correctly? Great. Thank you. Would you state your name for the record? Thank you. Any staff reports?
We have one report from planning.
Thank you. The Department of Planning recommends that this appeal, if granted, be subject to these conditions. The additional structure will comply with all requirements and standards of the Park Heights Urban Renewal Plan, because it is in the Park Heights Urban Renewal Area. There will be no parking, staging, or storing of vehicles on public rights-of-way. There will be no parking or storage of unlicensed vehicles on the property. All work must be performed indoors. All materials, parts, and equipment related to this use will be stored indoors. The area used for temporary storing of vehicles will be adequately buffered or screened from public view in accordance with designs approved by the Department of Planning. The canopy, which formerly sheltered gasoline pumps, will be removed, and if a dumpster is used to collect waste and trash related to this use, the dumpster will be placed either inside the existing building or within a masonry enclosure having a solid lockable wooden gate. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Tarasov, are those conditions acceptable to you?
Yes, we have one question about the canopy. We use that to store convertibles. We wanted to make sure if we can keep that like that.
Mr. French, is that, I'll put you on the spot. Does that comply with planning's conditions?
Technically not. I guess we would need to see a design as to how the canopy is necessary to protect convertibles, since it's fairly well off the ground. It's not exactly what we would consider a shelter for the purpose of protecting the interior of an open automobile. I understand your point. On behalf of the department, however, I can't exactly say. I mean, this is in an urban renewal area. Structures that are considered no longer in use from a functional point of view are supposed to be removed. You may need to talk to the community planner more about that particular thing. That's all I can tell you.
So I guess the question is, do you accept planning's conditions as is for purposes of today. You can certainly go back and talk to planning later to try to get those conditions modified or
Yes, sir.
clarified. But if you accept planning's conditions today, we can move forward today.
Yes, sir.
You do? Okay, thank you. Anything you'd like to add?
No, that's it.
Yeah, thank you. Zoning Board has sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
2014-565, 6010 Park Heights Avenue, Michael Freeman. And you're certainly not Michael Freeman.
No, but I'm here on his behalf.
Just state your name for the record, please.
My name is Lisa Junker.
To use Unit 101 as an accounting office. Staff reports, please.
We have a letter from Oliver Olivari and Associates. They are the attorneys that represent the condominium association. They indicate that there have been negotiations between the applicant and that he has agreed to reduce his request from a permit to an accountant's office only, and that the condominium association does not oppose this request as it is of a far lesser impact than a healthcare facility. We have a letter from the Cross Country Improvement Association indicating that they only support a non-resident accountant's office. We have a letter from Councilwoman Ricky Spector indicating that she supports the Cross Country Improvement Association and the Condominium Association. And we have planning's report.
Planning Department would not attempt to interfere with what appears to be a negotiated settlement of the differences that were apparently arising in this case. The department's official recommendation is if the board determines there has been non-conforming use of the premises that would allow the proposed use, or if the applicant provides information that would allow the board to determine that the proposed use could be categorized as a home occupation, the Department of Planning would have no objection to the proposed use. Thank you.
Johnson, anything you would like to add?
I would just like to concisely get all the information to a single point. The application was originally filed for use of a non-resident health service operations. I won't even go into details. Since then, the current owner of record, Dr. Freeman, is under contract to sell it to Stephen Graber. The sole operations out of Unit 101 at 6210 Park Heights Avenue is for accounting services only. There's no medical, other affiliated uses tied to this practice. Second of all, the last known use of this practice was for a non-resident dentist, which means we're pursuing the transfer of one non-conforming use for another, which is legally within your board authority to grant that approval.
So you and the appellant are okay if our approval limits it
To the accounting office
To the accounting
only?
office, yeah.
We would like for you to limit it to the accounting
Okay.
office only.
Great. Zoning Board has sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
2014-566, 2405 Fleet Street, Charm City Design and Development. Can you state your name, please?
Tony Valeri.
This is to construct a two-story rear addition with a rooftop deck.
Correct.
Any staff reports?
Planning Department has no comment on this application.
Is
Thank
there
you.
anything you'd like to add?
No.
Great. Zoning Board has sufficient information to approve your appeal, and don't go anywhere.
Correct.
2014-567, 521 South Curly Street. Again, to construct a two-story rear addition with a rooftop deck. Any staff reports?
Yes, there was a letter from the Camden Community Association indicating that they have had their meeting and that they have no objection to the proposed project.
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Anything you'd like to add?
No, sir.
Okay. Zoning Board has sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
2014-569, 935 South Bolden Street. Mike Neffel.
Good afternoon.
Can you state your name for the record, please?
Mike Knopfel.
Thank you. This is to remove the existing rear garage and to construct a two-story rear addition with a rooftop deck.
Yes, sir.
Correct? Any staff reports?
No staff report for you.
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Anything you'd like to add?
No, sir.
Zoning Board has sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you.
Have a good afternoon.
2014-574, 922 to 924 South Streeper Street. Mr. Cosner, just state your name for the record, please.
Mike Coster.
Staff reports?
I have nothing.
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Mr. Coster, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, sir.
Great. The zoning board has sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank you.
Thank you. 2014-576, 2307, 2309, and 2311 East Fairmont Avenue.
Good afternoon.
State your name for the record, Mr. Prettle.
Nate Prettle.
And you've already been sworn in. Any staff reports?
Thank you. The applicant is proposing a consolidation and subdivision of the property. Therefore, the subdivision must be approved by the Planning Commission. The department therefore recommends approval of this appeal, subject to Planning Commission approval of the proposed subdivision. Thank you.
Okay. And Mr. Prado, you're
Yeah.
okay with that?
Yes.
Anything you'd like to add?
No.
And the zoning board has sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you.
Thank you.
2014-594, 1725 Bolton Street.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Just state your name for the record, please.
Fernando Giuliano,
Okay, Mr. Giuliano, and your relationship to the property is?
the owner,
The owner. And Beverly Eisenberg is?
architect.
Architect, great. And this is to construct a one-story, two-car garage into the rear yard. Any staff reports?
Thank you. The department notes that the applicant has received a notice to proceed from the Commission for Historic and Architectural Preservation to authorize the proposed garage structure. Therefore, the department recommends approval of this appeal, subject to the condition that the proposed garage is constructed in accordance with the terms and conditions of the notice to proceed issued by the Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation. Thank you.
Okay. Are those conditions acceptable to you?
Yes, sir.
Anything you'd like to add?
No.
Zoning board has sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to our regular docket. First case, 2014-64, 3600 Clipper Mill Road. Let me get the non-attorneys sworn in, if we have non-attorneys testifying.
Swearing.
Raise your right hands, please. Raise your right hands, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay. There has been another appeal filed in this case. We've spoken to counsel prior to this hearing, and the board is consolidating all of the proceedings. The board is asking and requesting that all parties file all documents within the next 30 days related to this matter. We will then schedule a hearing. You will have the next hearing after the end of that 30-day period where we will hear everything concerning this matter. Any questions?
No. Yeah, go ahead. Do you have a question?
Well, I'm Sam Himmelrich. We're the owners of Meadow Mill in Baltimore City, and we have attempted to have this issue heard here continually. Clear Channel Outdoor has protested this. We believe they don't have standing. They've done things at the last minute. We believe that their interest is in continuing to dominate the outdoor advertising market and to deny us the ability to be a competitor or bring in another competitor. And I think that constantly, previously we were scheduled to be at the BMZA, and the morning of that event, they filed something and it got delayed. And then last night, they filed something again. And I feel like this needs to be heard. And we're property owners in the city of Baltimore. We've developed since acquiring Meadow Mill in a way that we're very proud of. We think it's an asset to Baltimore City. And we feel that what we're seeing is a delay, perhaps for the sake of delay, but it's clear that they don't want this heard. So
Well,
we now have
again-
another 30-day delay, and we've put up a sign.
The
based on a
consolidation
permit.
of these cases was a board decision. It wasn't coming from anybody, any of the parties to this case.
Okay.
Your counsel filed the most recent appeal, which was filed yesterday. We want to hear everything at one time, so we're going to give everybody time to respond to that, and then all documents must be filed within 30 days concerning this matter, and then we're going to hear everything on this matter at the first hearing date after the expiration of that 30-day period.
Okay. We filed an appeal because yesterday Clear Channel filed an appeal at the last minute. We got notice of it at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, and I'm
And I
not-
thought that, and
yeah.
I thought we had to do it, but I feel like their goal in this is to delay if indeed they can, you know, so.
And we share your concerns. One of the reasons that we have put the 30-day limit on the filing of any future motions is, frankly, council, if there's anything beyond 30 days filed, it will not be heard.
Is the
There will be no
intention to
delays.
schedule, I'm concerned that it's 30 days to file, and then that it'll be another 30 days to be heard. Is the plan to be heard?
We're going to schedule you the first hearing date after the expiration of that 30-day period.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you,
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Next case is 2014-527, 2305 Pressbury Street. Okay, we all up here?
Yes.
Let's get you all sworn in.
Raise your right hands, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Excuse me. On the appellant side, can I get you to state your name for the record?
Sure. Sayam, Sayam. Abbasi, last name Abbasi. No.
Say your name again.
Sayam, Sayam. Abbasi, Abbasi.
Okay. And Mr. Bassi, what is your relationship to the property?
Well, he's the owner of the property, and I'm his son.
Okay. Okay. And the opposition, we have a number of people up here. For efficiency's sake, do you have a spokesman? You know, we will understand if, rather than have repetitive testimony come up, we can understand if one person wants to present the argument for everybody. So if that's acceptable to you, that would be helpful, and I would say the same thing for your side.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Let's start with the appellant. Why don't you tell us what you want to do here?
Well, we are going to open a grocery store here. All documents will be there as soon as we get the zoning, we'll get started. The plan here is that we're going to have fresh fruits and the vegetables that are not present in anywhere around that area. Even though there's so many stores, there's no store that provides fresh fruits and vegetables. So that's our plan, and we are also talking with the president of the community to make a model for the whole community.
Okay. And what is in the property today?
Right now, it's vacant. We bought it vacant. We bought it from the auction. We cleaned it out, and now as soon as we get the zoning, we'll start the working, and we'll make it according to the, how the president or the people in charge will tell us to do so.
And how long has the property been vacant?
I'm not sure. We're not entirely sure.
Okay. And I neglected to ask for staff reports, so I'm going to interrupt you and ask if there's staff reports before we move forward.
Ready? Oh, you want to say something, Dave? Okay. We have a letter from the Ashco East Coppin Heights Neighborhood Association. They indicate that the appellant did attend a meeting. The appellant stated during this meeting that the property location would be opened as a grocery store, sandwich shop exclusively. There was no mention of continuing the dry cleaning business. It appears that the appellant has given the board and the neighborhood association conflicting information as it pertains to this. They indicate that the sign said to a retail grocery store and continue a dry cleaners. This property location is very small. Even though there are two properties that are connected, the property has always operated as a dry cleaners within limited space. Yeah. Okay, we also have a letter from a resident to the distinguished members of the Municipal and Zoning Appeals, myself, and over 100 other folks who live in the neighborhood are opposing this appeal to have a grocery store sandwich shop located at 230507 Pressbury Street. Via 100 signatures, a petition on file from the 12/16/14 scheduling. I have lived as a single parent resident in the 1700 block of Ruxton Avenue for over 31 years. I live approximately 6 houses from the establishment, having raised a son and 2 daughters, during those years, which was very trying times to say the least. However, they have graduated, gone to college, and have jobs and are productive citizens. We parents or heads of household have observed over the year, as the years go by, that our neighborhood has become heavy with drug traffic that has become uncontrollable. Neighborhood meetings were held with discussions in regards to how to solve this problem. However, the problems continue without help from much needed resources. Community activists like Ms. Johnson are aging out and are tired. Let's see. Potential home buyers and renters, along with parents who sort quality daycare and housing, have turned back due to the heavy drug activity. Over a period of 30 years, there have been more than 25 murders within 1 block radius of this property. The property where the appellant wants to have a grocery store is directly within that 1 block. The senseless killings have left our seniors and residents fearful, nearly hopeless. This is a residential community and has been since before I moved here. Our residents are in hopes that the owner will use the property to enhance the community in a positive way. We are in need of outreach centers for children who are at risk or failing in this society. But we also know that this is a business, not for profit. We do not need to create places where people hide out, hang out, running from the law. We also have continued from the last hearing the petition against and the letter from Councilman Nick Mosby indicating that he supports the residents in opposition to this request. Does planning have a report? Thank you.
Thank you. Department of Planning notes that this property is quite small. It's only 18 feet wide by 36 feet deep. It's got a single-story building located on it, commercial building. The applicant in the application stated that the intention was to retain the dry cleaning business but add a grocery store and a carry-out food shop. The Planning Department noted that the carry-out food shop would not be eligible for approval by the board because it is not a use listed in the B1 portion of the zoning code. However, a grocery store would be something the zoning board could approve as a change of non-conforming use or in addition to the existing non-conforming use of the property. The department therefore recommends disapproval of the portion of the appeal relating to the carry-out food shop and has no objection to the remainder of the application. Thank you.
Mr. Bossi, again, I apologize for interrupting. If you want to continue what you're saying or if you'd like to address what planning has just stated, please.
वो कह रहा है कि उसके बारे में अगर किसी का आंसर करना है तो वो कर सकते हैं अभी
किस चीज़ के बारे में
और जो उसने लेटर से पढ़ी
बोलो कि हमने तो ये नहीं ली है हमने कमर्शियल जगह ली है और प्रेसिडेंट हमारे साथ है उसको
Okay.
उससे बात करो प्रेसिडेंट से बात करो
We just bought this property very recently from the auction, and we did not know about any of whatever was going around here. But we come in peace. We come in here, and we have a plan that we are going to make a positive effect on the community. And again, as I said, that we are going to have a model store there, a grocery store. We also have the president and we have a lot of support from her. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to make all the programs like SNAP program and stuff of that nature that can really help the community that is nowhere there around the community. We are actually trying to get all of that, so in order to help the community overall.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
If President can tell you about the more programs that
Sure.
we're going to be there.
Question,
Sure.
Mike. So is it your testimony that you're only proposing a grocery store and not continuing dry cleaning, or are you proposing, as
Yeah,
your
okay.
application says, are you gonna continue
Yes.
dry cleaning?
Well, the reason. Okay. There are actually two properties, as we discussed last. There are actually two properties that are connected. There's 2305 and 2307. We're actually talking to the person who owns the property 2307 that is not ours. If in case we get that property, that's when we're going to continue the dry cleaning business as a separate. Otherwise, we're just continuing as 2305 as a grocery store. We just want to get approved so that in case we get approved for 2307, or we actually get the 2307, then we can actually start the business over there, the dry cleaning business. Does that answer your question, sir?
Well, it does, yeah. So 2307 is not before us today. We're not
No,
hearing.
we're not talking
I'm
about
telling
that,
you, it's
yes.
not. So there's going to be no dry cleaning in 2305.
No.
Okay. Ma'am, would you like to?
And some of the programs that we're going to have. Can you talk about that?
Good evening. I am Shelia Davis, and I am the president of Ashco East Coppin Heights, SHELIA. And we currently live in what we call a food desert, and we are working with a number of folks to create some model grocery stores in our community. And Mr. Abbas is going to be the start of it. We also are working with urban planning at Coppin State University with Dr. Morgan to assist Mr. Abbas in bringing fresh fruits and vegetables to our community. Currently, there are a number of things that went on in reference to this property, and unfortunately, there are people who have misrepresented our community. There has been a lot of violence, but that violence is not due to someone who these people have not been there before. So these things occurred from our own community inside, unfortunately. A business owner who's not been there did not have anything to do with that. We are more concerned about trash and things like that, which is our priority, my community's priority. I did hear that there was a letter from Ashco East. I'm not sure if that person actually belongs to my organization, because there had been a number of, unfortunately, people who had signed a petition that didn't even live in our community.
Excuse me.
And,
We're going to do one side at a time, okay?
They also claim to be the leaders of our community, and that's not true, too. Now, there are some people who are here that I belong to another organization, which is right next to mine, which is Matthew Henson. And we share boundaries. And we have agreed that we will do things together. I don't know if you're familiar with Doc Cheatham, but he is also the president of that community. So we have had problems with a number of stores. However, this property has been empty, so I can't even get anyone to pick up trash down there because there's no owner. So now that we have some new neighbors, I am actually happy because now we have people that can work with us in this community. I don't know if you're familiar with the community, but the college has come straight through my community. So we are a community in need of a lot of things. And one of the things that we need is we need fresh fruits and vegetables. And this particular owner is willing to work with us. We've had a couple of meetings about our food desert situation because we lost Stop, Shop, and Save and some other things where older people could go to. And we want to provide things for single parents, and we want to make sure that they actually get cooking classes and things like that. So this is what, in my vision as the leader of Ashco East Coppin Heights, which the boundary starts at Bentalo, goes to Dukeland, to the south at Baker, and to the north, North Avenue.
How long has this property been vacant?
Approximately, I say about 4 years, about somewhere around that
Excuse me,
time.
well, they're going to do one side at a time.
Yeah.
Just wait, you'll
Yeah.
have your chance.
Some people owned it. There was a cleaners there. The previous owner was Mr. Murray, William Murray. And it was sold to a lady who also, it is a backstory to this property. There is a backstory to this property. And the other thing that really disturbed me is that some of the people came to my meeting and were very disruptive because maybe they were promised something by the previous owner, I'm not sure. But they have been harassing them. I have taken all of that down to the Western District Police Station to identify this particular person who has been coming around and really harassing the people. And they had nothing to do with the crime or anything. The crime came from within, unfortunately. It's still there. But we are working with the crime element as well because they need fresh fruits and vegetables too. So that's where I'm at with it. I have a food access plan, and they are a part of my food access plan.
Okay.
So I support, and they also are a part of my organization. Thank you.
Okay. Now let's hear from your opposition. Yeah, certainly.
I'm Reverend Ruby M. Purnell and his president of the Smallwood Free Association. We've been there over 32 years, one of the first. I stand today because I realize the fact that we just do not need any more stores in that area. I know that there's a drug problem, and we've been the ones who've been fighting the drug problem. I've been in that area over 55 years. And I think it is time for us to get something for our young people. Like they need tutoring. It's so many things. I don't know why everybody want to come in and have a store. I do not, as the president of Smallwood Association, agree. And my reason is that I've seen our young people get killed there. And if we open any kind of store in that community, we're going to have the same problems that we have now. Right on the next corner, there is a store on Bentlow Street. Up the next corner, there is a store up there. On North Avenue, Carteret, nothing but stores there. So I, as the president of Smallwood Street, been there for over 30-some years, 32 years, as president. My husband was the president first. When nobody else was doing anything, we were cleaning up. And now all of a sudden, everybody want to come in and open up a business. That's where I stand with it. And if it is approved today, there will be some things that we would like as Smallwood Street Association to be done. Number one, we need better lighting. That's number one. Number two, we need cameras. Number three, we need him to hire somebody in our community. Because our young people need jobs. And when these businesses come in our community, they don't hire anybody. They bring their whole family, and they're the ones who reach the benefits of the finance. And then they go home at night and leave their trash and leave others hanging around. It is time for us to speak up for the right thing. We need to be a community together. We have 100 and some odd names the last time we were down here saying that they did not want it. Thank you for allowing me to say this.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Yes. My name is Regina Jackson, and I'm the person that wrote the letter that the distinguished gentleman here read. He didn't read it in its entirety. But I am a mother of three. My children are grown. They have gone to college. And through the 30 years, it's been just chaos. And I don't want to be redundant, Mr. Chairman, about it. However, my feeling about it is that this grocery store, first of all, Mr. Muhammad put the sign up saying that he wanted to have the grocery store / sub shop an extension with this dry cleaning business. That's what the signs went up. So the community was alerted that he wanted to have a grocery store and the laundry, the dry cleaning. So the sign is there now saying the same thing. He comes today and say he just wants the grocery store. We were in opposition, not of both, but of the grocery store / sub shop, because children will linger around. It's been my observation for over 31 years as a single parent. As a single parent, I've watched within 1 block radiuses, 2 and 3 doors from my step, blood and bloodshed from, I live 6 doors away from this establishment. And I've seen bodies. I've walked through. It's just something. For 30 years, there's been at least 25 dead black males. And we just cleaned up the community. That property has been vacant for 1 year. And it's because of the Baltimore City Police Department working with us. We've been patrolling, keeping that corner clean. So when they surveyed the property, they didn't see what other people saw who didn't want to come into the community anymore, because we begin to step up and we begin to take over our streets. And now for him to understand he wants to earn a living and this is what he wants to do. But as far as fresh vegetables and food and all, our community helps each other. We have these things. We take care of our elderly. We put their trash out. We make sure they have food to eat. We have a grocery store up Mondawmin. And then we have the corner stores that's more convenient for the small children who congregate around, and the police is continually have to be called all the time. This would be like sticking your finger in a fire. You're going to get burned. This is my observation. I raised my 3 children. 1 of them are here today, standing with me. And it took a lot for me to keep them children focused. But unfortunately, every parent isn't like that. They can't do that. I worked 2 and 3 jobs, and I graduated from Coppin. 26 years it took me to get a BA degree. I've helped children in the communities and grandmas, but this is not a good thing. It would not be a good thing for our children. This guy just said to me, and his wife said to me, well, we wanted to, sister, yeah, okay, I apologize. I said to me, I told him what was going on. We couldn't come to agreement because it's all about, for him and my determined, it's about the money. And she said, well, we didn't kill them. And I was saying, please, can you do something else with the property? Dry cleaners is fine, but something where these children will not congregate. And it's just a matter of time. And we've worked so hard in the last year. The property it's only been 1 year. And we as community members were even thinking about it ourselves, trying to get together, getting some money together, and creating an outreach property. But in the meantime, when things are calming down and everybody's working together and things are calming down, there hasn't been a death in 1 year. And that's a plus, because we've all been working together. And now you come in and you say that you don't even care about, and this is what you said, you don't even care about what the present status is. All he cares about is the money. He's put money into the property. He lied. He lied and said that he wanted to have a dry cleaners. That's what the sign says. His intention from the beginning was to have a grocery store. He put the sign to make the neighbors think, in my interpretation, that we want to have a dry cleaners too. But the intention was not to have a dry cleaners. It was a grocery store. And the fresh vegetables and fruit, we do that anyway. It's not that you looked around and you saw, that other stores didn't have it, because they are equipped with it. But I just really want to plead with the board to please reconsider any grocery store, if that's within the guidelines or laws. And like Ms. Purnell said right here, if they have to have it, there has to be some conditions, some really, really stern conditions, because it's just inevitable that it will grow. It's going to draw that crowd back. And it's just sad, but it's true. Thanks for listening.
Is there anything? Yep.
Question for you.
What-
Yes, sir.
Do you see any distinction between a grocery store and a carry-out store?
No,
The
sir.
other stores in your neighborhood, I understand, are carry-out sub-shops, if you will.
There's no separation from the two, because as long as the doors are open and you're selling something, in there. And, you know, it's some place for these children to congregate and come in and come out, and the police come by and they're dodging in and out. And after they're gone or before they come in, it's a place where the police would, you know, would say, think that they're buying something, you know, purchasing something out of the stores. It's basically a smoke screen for now. I'm not saying that later on as things get a little better in the community. It's only been a year. It hasn't been 4 years, 1 year. Maybe, you know, a few years from now when the community gets a lot stronger, then something like that is warranted. But at this time, and thanks for asking me that question, not at this time. It's going to bring a lot more chaos.
So there's a little bit of conflicting testimony with respect to how long the facility's been abandoned?
Yes, sir.
You had said that it's been 1 year?
Yes.
Or is it your testimony that the dry cleaning business was functioning a year ago?
Well, let me tell you, in October of 2013, it was some gunfire, and the bullets came through my window. In October 2013, the building was open then. So that's about a year or a little over a year.
Mr. Tanner, do we have any history as to permits in this building?
We do show that the last use was authorized as a dry cleaning establishment, but I don't have any further information about when that was established. Other than the fact that in 1968, the board authorized the extension of a tailoring and pressing business into 2307 and to install dry cleaning facility. So it's been a long time.
So there was a previous owner, I'm not sure what he used it for, but it wasn't a dry cleaners. The previous owner that I knew, who has a business at the other side, on the top of my street, sold that business some time ago. So it's really been kind of a, I'm not sure, because it was never assigned to, I think they were cooking out there at one time, but mainly, like I said, it's a backstory to
Right,
the
but
property.
I'm focusing on how long ago was it
Yeah, it's been
abandoned?
about that 3 to 4 years, yeah, at least.
And when you said it's been abandoned for a year, what was in that shop?
It was the dry cleaning equipment where you would have the clothes on the racks and you would push the button in, because I've taken clothes there and about less than 2 years ago.
So was the dry cleaner operating out of 2305 and 2307?
That's where I got my tickets from. I took my clothes there and I got my clothes picked up from there about 2 years ago. So it had all the equipment.
Yes, state your name, please.
Oh, I'm David Jones. 05 was actually the dry cleaners where you go in and you get your ticket, you drop your clothes off. Next door is where he had the machines for the dry, the pressing, and the washing. So that's what the building was.
So it was open up?
Yes, it was open up. And can I state something else? My name is David Jones. Again, the main reason why we don't want that grocery store there, and I don't want to keep sounding over and over again, is because of the violence. You know, when the young lady says something about it being dirty down there, trash being down there, hasn't been no trash down there. She stays in her 1800 block. I'm from that neighborhood, been there for 44 years. I know everything that goes on in the neighborhood. The majority of the people that was killed in that neighborhood, I happen to know. So when you state that down on President Ruxton, that's trash, that's not true, because myself, Ronnie, and other people, we get the trash up. Hasn't been no trash or anything around there. We don't even allow drugs to be sold really from the 1600 block, the whole block of Ruxton, 16 to 18. Michelle, with all due respect, she don't know what goes on in the neighborhood. She stays in the 1800 block. She's not part of what goes on. As for a store having fresh fruits and vegetables, that's the least of our worries. We have a store right on the corner of the 1800 block of Ruxton Mr. Sam had for 11 years. When I go in there, he has fruits and vegetables when I go in there. I've never seen Miss Sheila patronize that store. So to say that we need fruits and vegetables, no, we need a community to stick together and to get rid of that crime. And so far, I believe we've been doing a good job and even putting my life on the line to get rid of that element. You understand? Because, you know, I can easily become a victim, but I stand up for what I believe, and I have 2 daughters in the neighborhood. You know, my mom's no longer lived around there, but I have daughters around there, and I make it my business to ensure that there's no drugs being sold between Baker Street and North Avenue. No one else has took on that. Me and this gentleman, along with some other gentlemen, stopped the Bloods from moving into that neighborhood. We did that.
Sir, I hear you. We're going to try to move this
Oh
along.
yeah, I'm sorry.
That's
But
okay.
again, we just don't want, I'm scared of that element coming back. Again, hasn't been no murders around there. I think the last murder was in September of last year. You don't need them. Before that, was one in May. Before that, it was one in March. Before that, handicapped friend of mine in a wheelchair got killed that December. So again, bringing that place, that hub where people can dip into a store and hide when the police come, we don't need that. I don't mind it being the dry cleaners. I've been taking my cleaners there for at least 20 years. But as far as having another grocery store, a place where these guys can, and you can put all the spotlights, all the cameras, whatever you want out there, that's not going to deter that. We all know that. You know, they scatter like roaches as soon as the lights come on. So that's not going to deter anything. Just, again, having that element, catering to, because who you're going to cater to, and I'm going to speed this along, who you're going to cater to is the little guys out there that get high. You're going, let's just call it what it is, buying the tobacco, dumping it out, pouring that marijuana in there. That's who you're going to cater to, the guys that's buying the blunts, the so-called cigars and stuff of that nature. So when you selling that type of product in this so-called convenience store, grocery store, whatever, yeah, they're going to hang out there.
Yeah, I think we get a sense of.
Yeah, we all quite sure come from the same place.
Sir, do you want to add something?
I'm Ronnie Goodman.
Something different?
Yeah, this is my mother, Regina Jackson. And I just wanted to say, I've been living in a community since I was 8 years old, seeing everything you said, the crime. And it's true that, and I believe all of us know that when you're in a certain area, these stores, they bring a certain element. But just to be brief, and I'm concerned about sincerity. When we spoke with Mr. Muhammad in the hallway, he came with, fresh fruits and vegetables. It's like a concern, like you're concerned that, you're concerned about my health. But then when I speak of the crime is, we dying, our kids dying, you say, that's not my problem, or I didn't do that, so you're concerned about my health, but not concerned about the lives of we come up in that neighborhood. He didn't come up because he doesn't know. But I believe we all intelligent in here. So, of course, it's a businessman. I understand business, but at the time, it's not a matter of business to us. It's a matter of life and death, and that's all I have to add.
Good. Thank you very much. Anything different?
My name is Ira Booker. I came before this board in 2012 when you changed the store on the corner of Bentlow and Presbury from a barbershop to a grocery store, as said. And I said then that it's going to be a drug problem, and it has been a problem. It's a constant problem. And this store is only a half a block away. Western District Police is having a time with that corner now, and this is going to make a half a block run back and forth. It's just, I'm concerned about the drug problem.
We hear you.
Thank you.
All here, I believe that some of these people do not even belong to the community that the store is in. First of all. Second, that all the conditions that have been presented, the spotlights, the videotaping, we agree to that, and we're going to put some, all that we can do to protect, the whole area that we're going to be there for. And that's pretty much it. I mean, we're trying to help the community in every way possible. And if, someone disagrees with us, I mean, we can't do anything about that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions from the board?
Just one parting question. So you have no desire in terms of considering making it just a dry cleaning?
No.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right.
Next case, 2014-550, 3425 to 27 Keswick Road. Can we, excuse me, can we take, we're trying to do the next here, we can take your conversations outside, that would be great, I appreciate it, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Good afternoon, let's get you sworn in.
Raise your hands, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, Mr., do we have any staff reports on this?
Thank you. Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this property
Has previously been approved for 2 dwelling units, one nominally at 3425, one nominally at 3427 Keswick Road, and for an upholstery shop. There was information available to the Planning Department that the upholstery shop may have closed in 2000. However, the more important point is that the property contains 2 dwelling units, and it's in an R7 zoning district, and the zoning code requires that any increase in the number of dwelling units in an R7 zoning district from 1 or 2 to additional number must be approved by ordinance by the mayor and city council. And therefore, the Department of Planning recommends disapproval of the appeal because the zoning code does not provide the board discretionary authority to approve conversion of a 1 or a 2-family dwelling to additional dwelling units in the R7 zoning district. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Frederick?
Good afternoon. My name is Ben Frederick, and I have with me here Stephanie Miller. Stephanie is the owner of the property. And I have some information and photographs of the building I'd like to hand to the board members. Sorry. Okay. And it appears that in 1999, the upholstery shop was closed, or that the building was converted from an upholstery shop somewhere around 1999. And if you look at the photograph of the front of the building, you can see the front porch was enclosed, and that's where the retail store was. Before it was an upholstery shop, the zoning records go back to 1961 when there was a grocery store listed as occupying that front commercial space. Today, that front commercial space is improved as an apartment, and here's a photograph I took of that front apartment. And so you can see the improvements were done some time ago. And apparently what happened is that, in 1999 or 2000, when this conversion occurred, when they converted that space from the upholstery shop into a third apartment, they didn't go through the zoning board. They didn't go through this, the process that they're supposed to go through. And as a real estate person, I see this all the time, unfortunately. So when I see these situations, when I see them, I just try to fix them. Okay, so I would like to implore upon the board and ask for your discretion that if this conversion in fact happened somewhere in 1999 or 2000, that if this could be viewed as a conversion of the non-conforming commercial space into a third dwelling unit, just to bring the city's records in line with what's actually going on with the building there. We do have letters of approval from the Wyman Park Community Association does support our zoning appeal. The neighbors on either side of the property, they have submitted letters in support of the zoning appeal as well. And we're very delighted to have Mary Pat Clark here in support of our appeal as well.
Councilwoman?
I didn't get sworn in.
We can do that very quickly.
Would you?
Yeah.
Or would that?
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Thank you. Thank you, members of the board. I'm not getting into the question of the authority here. That's your decision to make based on what's before you. But I would like to say very positive words about this proposal. I've visited the house that has, it's all been refinished inside, it's vacant. It's unoccupied. It's not a vacant structure. It's been it has been 3 units, but now the front unit has been converted from the upholstery shop that was there to a small apartment. I am the person who referred Ms. Miller here because I'm very happy to introduce a city council ordinance for her and to support it. But I wasn't sure whether or not this was an instance in which the board did have authority or not, given what has been said. So I just wanted to say, that's up to you, obviously, but this is a lovely location. The only conditions I would like to add to any approval that you might make, and that's depending on your decision about authority, is that the owner not subdivide the lot while she's the owner, and that she not add or seek to add any more units than the 3. That's really what the neighborhood association president and one neighbor in particular is very interested in, and I am too. So it's a lovely house. Ms. Miller lives down the street, around the corner from where it's located, and is going to move in to the location, which I know Mr. Easter next door is especially pleased about if this all goes through. And if it cannot go through here, I will sponsor legislation in the Baltimore City Council, but I leave that for you to decide. Thank you.
Ms. Miller, would you state your name for the record, please?
Stephanie Miller.
And if this board were to approve this, do you agree with the conditions set forth by Councilwoman Clark?
Yes.
Any questions from the board? No. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
(2014) 568, 3035 East Baltimore Street. You all had a chance to talk outside. Was there any resolution?
I believe so.
Okay. Well, we'll hear this case. Let's get you all sworn in.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Great. Would you state your name for the record, please?
My name's Steve Carroll.
Steve? Mr. Carroll, and your relationship to the property is?
I'm the owner.
Okay. Okay, why don't you describe to us why you're here today?
I'm here to subdivide the building into 3 lots to build 3 individual townhomes with rear garages.
Okay. Go into that a little bit?
Sorry?
You want to go into that a little bit?
I don't know what more to add.
Describe the houses you want to build.
Well, we're staying in consistent with the rest of the block. Just 2-story. The front elevations will match. I actually own the house next door, 3033, which was fully rehabbed. So the elevation will stay consistent with that all the way to the end of the block. Same height, window configuration, everything. I believe the rear of the building, we're going to take some of that off to have rear garages. And then I believe in the paper that I'm reading here, I think part of planning is to maybe give, if I'm reading that correctly, give 5 feet of the property to the city to make, I guess that would be to make that alley 15 feet wide. Right now it's 10 feet. I know 15 feet is the acceptable width. So trying to remember what that word was in there, but
Okay.
allocate, what is it? 5 feet back to the city. So I guess we would be giving that to.
Okay. And I forgot, and I'm sorry, I forgot to ask for staff reports. May I ask for those now?
We have one report.
Thank you. Planning Department reviewed this application notes that because it does propose a subdivision of the property, The subdivision will require approval by the Planning Commission. The department recommends approval of the appeal subject to Planning Commission approval of the proposed subdivision. The detail of the subdivision, which the applicant has just mentioned, would be something that would be worked out prior to the presentation of the subdivision plan to the Planning Commission for approval.
I'm Steve Gondel. I'm a resident of the Patterson Park Neighborhood Association, and as we've been talking to the developer about obviously trying to get the best use out of the property, as a resident of the neighborhood for 10 years, one of the concerns that I personally have with the demolition of this church is that, one, I think it reduces the number of non-residential structures that we currently have in our neighborhood, and specifically, I think what we lose is potential that building has. Given that the church itself is currently 3 units wide. When the property was listed, it listed a wide variety of uses, whether commercial, apartments, condos, there's a broad range that is there. So it gives hope that there's a lot that can be done with this from a non-residential standpoint. One of the other issues I have is that as the Baltimore Development Corporation has issued, kind of the CEDS report, the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, I just want to draw that the second strategy is improve Baltimore's resources for small businesses and entrepreneurs. And my question to the planning department and even to this commission is that when you look at what that second bullet asked is increase access to grocery and retail outlets. And it notes that Baltimore does not have enough consumer retail outlets or grocery stores, poses a hardship on residents of many communities, but opens up development opportunities to meet the retail demand. And it talks about acquiring, developing a series of retail opportunity sites that can be directly marketed to developers and retailers for accelerated development. And so I guess the question I have is that, as if this were to move forward, what does the neighborhood lose for potential planning and development opportunities, non-residential? Because right now I feel that the Patterson Park neighborhood is heavily residential and losing
I don't mean to interrupt you. One thing you need to realize, this is zoned R8. This is zoned residential. This is designed to be residential.
But the existing use was non-residential.
Right, but the zoning is residential.
I understand that. Yeah. And why we're here today is that it is the use prior was a non-conforming use in that district.
Yeah, they're not a commercial use.
However, this church is not compliant in any way because it covers the entire lot, the parking. Any future commercial use of the property would require an ordinance to rezone the property to allow for commercial uses to go in there. And they would be limited because of the size of the lot. I mean, there's not a whole lot of commercial potential here without major changes to the current zone. I guess that's the only comment I have.
Well, there would be, the thought is there would be the possibility of that. If it's demolished and turned into 3 structure, there's no possibility of pursuing any opportunity for that.
Well,
Okay, we hear you.
Thank you.
My name's Steve Preston. I'm also a resident of Patterson Park, and I hold the same worries that Steve Gondel holds, that once this church is gone, that there goes another commercial establishment opportunity in the neighborhood. Patterson Park, one by one, I see homes getting rehabbed, and we're very, very gifted in that. There's many areas of the city that don't have that right now. And our fear is that, then as homes get redeveloped in this area, that then we become a suburb essentially within the city. So what we're asking the board to sort of think of is if this is subdivided and it turned into 3 residential properties from this non-conforming use, that then there goes a lost opportunity, and sort of that is a stake in the coffin of Patterson Park becoming a really booming neighborhood that we want, a diverse neighborhood that has diverse businesses and opportunities for residents. So our hope is that you'll think about this, and maybe there's the potential to push back a hearing or a decision on this to another date, so that we could meet with potential investors and have some more time to think about doing something with this. So.
Anything you'd like to add? No. Any questions? Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
call this one again, 2014-571, 201 South Ann and 1805 East Pratt Street, Gina Campbell. Next case, 2014-575, 2200 Sinclair Lane. Okay, let's get you all sworn in.
You swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
We do.
State your name for the record, please.
Good afternoon. My name is William Johnson. I'm the Director of the Department of Transportation, City of Baltimore.
Great, thank you. And let me ask, are there any staff reports?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
All right, why don't you tell us why you're here and what you want to do?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for allowing us to present before the board. This request is being made under the zoning code section 3-110, part 7, which allows by right installations and equipment or accessories of a public utility or governmental service. Also consider section 4-203, part 8, which permits by conditional use granted by this board governmental services. In 2013, the Baltimore City Board of School Commissioners surplused and closed the Paquin School, making it available to city agencies for governmental use. In June 2014, the Board of Estimates transferred the property from the school board system to inventory to DOT for use as office space. We need the building to house our maintenance division administrative function so that it can free up the current space being occupied by our administrative group to allow us to relocate or consolidate our towing activity in downtown, and also to make space for our planned bike share program that we're going to be starting up hopefully in this coming year. With this body's approval, DOT would use the school, the second floor of the space, to provide offices for maintenance division administration. It's the administrative section, which includes about 60 employees. We do not plan to make any alterations to the interior of the building. In fact, the floor plan and boards, we have drawings if that would be necessary, remain consistent with our intended use. We do plan to install a door and, at the community's request, build a fence around the property in the same style as the ornamental fence currently installed at the neighboring rec center, but we would not be doing any other alterations. DOT has also worked with members of Build Inc. and Darley Park Community Association, East North Avenue Community Development Corp., the new South Clifton Park Community Association, and council members Clark and Stokes to ensure that their concerns are addressed through an MOU that we plan to bring to the Board of Estimates for approval on February 4th. We committed to the following benefits for the community. We'll leave the auditorium on the building on the building's first floor as is, allowing community groups to use it for community events. We have promised not to build any additional parking lot on the site or park trucks on or on a recurring basis at the existing parking lot. We've committed to creating 3 computer workstations and a meeting room for the use during business hours by the community. We'll clean up a vacant lot located on the 2300 block of Harford Road to prep it for the community to build a garden there.
will build and install 3 community gateway signs for the South Clifton Park and Darley Park communities. And we will retain the building's name, calling it the Lawrence G. Paquin Department of Transportation Maintenance Division Headquarters. And finally, we've committed to developing a 3-year traffic calming plan for the streets surrounding Paquin, which will include a traffic study, requests for community input and comments, recommendations for solutions to improve pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular traffic flow and safety, and implementation of the proposed improvements such as improved signage, street markings, crosswalks, bike lanes, and other facilities as determined most appropriate from the study. Myself and members of my team are here to answer any questions you may have.
I guess I'd like you to explain a little more how you get to where you want to be using 3110. My read of 3110 looks like it's more equipment focused than office focused. So I guess I'd like to hear a little more on that. Please.
I did have discussions about this project with everybody involved, including the zoning administrator, who I believe recommended this section to be considered basically under number 7, which is 3110-7, which talks about similar installations and equipment or accessories of a public utility or government service, which is a very broad category that allows for some interpretation to allow for a variety of things to go, anywhere in the city. I think that was his recommendation that the board consider it under that section. I'm leaving that up to the board to decide, but that was the thinking behind it early on in the process for this application.
Barbara Zektic, Department of Transportation. I would only add that I hope you would consider this in conjunction with Section 4203, which is the other section we cited, which does require us to come to this board for approval, which is why we're here today. The two sections in conjunction do refer both to government services. That section refers to a couple that are of a different quality than the ones of the section that you had just cited, but I hope that in conjunction you will consider this a government service and consider this use.
Do you have any support for government service being defined to include office?
Well, if you look at 4203,
Yeah, it does. It says
Section
fire,
8.
police stations, sewage pumping stations, water filtration plants, reservoirs, and pumping stations.
Right, so much like a fire office, a police have office, Department of Public Works would have office facilities. All of these, just like the Department of Transportation office facilities, all support a very government function. Zektic. Z as in zebra, E as in Edgar, K as in Kelly, T as in Tom, I as in India, C as in Charlie, K as in Kelly.
The lot next to the building in question, is that a part of the property? Okay, and how many cars does that accommodate?
I believe.
State your name.
My name is Richard Hooper. I'm Operations Bureau Chief for Department of Transportation. I believe that handles 40 vehicles. Hooper, Hooper.
Any questions from the board? Anything else you'd like to add? All right, okay, thank you very much. (2014-580) 123 and 5 East Lexington Street, 115 North Charles Street. Mr. Prettle? I am going to recuse myself from this case, and Ms. Bonnet will handle this.
Guess we'll start with getting you both sworn in.
Raise your right hands, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Building staff report.
We have one report from planning.
Thank you. Planning Department notes this is going to involve consolidation of 3 separate properties for redevelopment as 25 units in retail space. This is a very significant corner of downtown Baltimore. And the department notes that there is an urban renewal plan, the Central Business District Urban Renewal Plan, which does establish certain standards for property rehabilitation, which would apply to this particular application. The department therefore recommends approval of this appeal, subject to the condition that the redevelopment of this property is consistent with the standards and requirements of the Central Business District Urban Renewal Plan. Thank you.
Problems or concerns with the conditions?
No, I don't.
Okay. Mr. Prettle, we'll hear from you.
Okay, sure. So this project involves the historic renovation of what's previously known as the Central Savings Bank building on the corner of North Charles and East Lexington Street. The primary building would be the Central Savings Bank building with 113 Charles Street to the south and 5 East Lexington to the east. And the plan, as stated before, is to use the upper levels as 25 dwelling units and use the first floor as retail. We're here before this board, or actually I should mention that this is a complete historic renovation of the building and we're working with the city's Commission for Historic and Architectural Preservation, as well as the Maryland Historic Trust, which we both have approval from already. And we're also working with the National Park Service, which I think should be obtaining their approval within the next couple of weeks. What the historic renovation entails, as well as keeping the historic exterior, is preserving the original ceilings, vaults, windows, elevator shaft, which required a waiver from the city's fire marshal to continue to use the historic elevator shaft, and hallways as well. We're here before this board for a parking variance and nothing else. The 25 dwelling units have a parking requirement of 6 parking spaces. We're unable to provide any on-site due to the historic character of the building. In relation to the variance standards, both the uniqueness and our hardship and practical difficulty both stem from the historic character. The building takes up the entirety of the lot, and for us to go on the path we're going for historic tax credits, to make any alterations to allow parking, we wouldn't be able to obtain those tax credits and would seriously put the property or the project at jeopardy. So that's a summary. I'll leave myself open for any questions or hear from our opposition.
Any opportunity for parking nearby?
Not that would meet the zoning code standards for parking, which requires a long-term lease. We've explored that, and there just simply aren't any. One thing that this building does have an advantage on is that we're in walking distance to both the metro, the light rail, multiple MTA lines, circulator route on Charles Street, as well as zip car locations nearby. I mean, we'll continue to explore parking downtown, as much as we can, but we haven't been able to find any. And there's several other buildings. I mean, this is another project in a long line of recent adaptive reuse conversions downtown for apartments, some which provide parking, some which don't. And we found that maybe around only 50% of tenants in these buildings actually have cars.
Ma'am, we'll hear from you. Can you state your name for the record?
Hi, my name is Patricia Lindquist, and my concern with the buildings and the historic buildings in Maryland is that I've seen what's gone on since I've been here in 2012, is that they're saying that they're renovating these buildings, and the insides of them, the outsides, the insides have gone to ultra-modern. Everything has come out. Everything's been stripped out of these buildings, everything. The moldings, the ceilings, everything. They don't, nothing is staying historical. Over here on Franklin Street, the old college, it was a beautiful building inside. it is going ultra-modern, terrible, like 2030 into the future. It's terrible. I'm very disappointed. It's a disgust to Maryland and to that building and to the architecture of it on the outside. And they've changed that. I'm concerned about these beautiful historical buildings on this block, and that they remain the same, and that whoever is ripping down all the historic placards off of all these buildings in Maryland, I invite the council, the mayor needs to, and the governor needs to walk around Maryland and see the Ashbury House. The historical placard is off of the Ashbury House.
Well, let's
Okay,
stay
well,
focused
this
on
one also, these also, all the historical placards are down. And my concern is that they are going to destroy the history of these buildings and the architecture and the insides architecture of these buildings. I don't know that they will come to the conclusion that they don't need to do harm to the history of the buildings in Maryland.
Okay.
Sure. As I mentioned before, we're receiving historic tax credits on this project, and we're receiving approval from city, state, and local historic preservation regulators. So, and also mentioned, I don't know if this made it to your file. This is a letter of support from the Downtown Partnership of Baltimore. We also have Mr. Kirby Fowler is here in attendance. If anyone had any questions for him. It was emailed maybe a couple hours before the hearing today.
It's probably on my desk.
Okay. I'll bring another copy.
Thank
Mayor,
you.
have you seen this letter? Would you like this one?
I did.
We were able to speak before.
I did see the email before I came over here.
In, again, in relation to some of these comments we discussed, I think we share the same goal for this building, and I think hopefully this will be a preservation jewel for downtown Baltimore.
And what kind of businesses are going to go, excuse me,
Well, the order of the proceedings is that the moving party goes first, and then you have an opportunity to speak, and now we're back to him, so we're a little beyond that. But if you could just, if you're done with the letter. Thank you. Anything further?
No.
Any questions for either of the parties here? Okay. Thank you both.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Next case is 2014 589 1 Light Street. Why don't you guys come down to this side so our opposition can be here? Come on up, let's get you all sworn in. You've been sworn in already. You can come up, you can come up.
Raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. For 1 Light Street, do we have any staff reports?
Yes, we have received a letter from Downtown Partnership indicating on behalf of the partnership, I am writing in support of Metropolitan Baltimore Street LLC in its request for a floor area ratio variance at 1 Light Street. The developer's plan to create a mixed-use tower at 1 Light Street is one of the most important pieces of progress for downtown real estate in recent history. The concerned property has not been in active use for over 2 decades, and during this time, deteriorating conditions have impacted the health of adjacent properties. Indeed, the partnership's 2011 strategic plan highlights 1 Light Street as an underutilized parcel of concern. And we have planning's report.
Thank you. Planning Department noted that this property, just as the one which you previously heard, is located in the Central Business District Urban Renewal Plan area, and therefore its reuse is going to be subject to the standards of that urban renewal plan. This includes, in this particular case, because this is essentially an infill development and redevelopment, approval of plans by the Urban Design and Architectural Review Panel. And in fact, this particular project was presented this morning at that time to the panel, and they will be returning for additional sessions with the panel. Subject to those comments, the department recommends approval of this appeal, subject to the conditions that the redevelopment of this property be consistent with the standards and requirements of the Central Business District Urban Renewal Plan, including Urban Design and Architectural Review Panel review of the proposed structure, and that the development plan for the property be approved by the Site Plan Review Committee of the, which is chaired by the Planning Department. Thank you. Yeah.
One Light Street is in conjunction with Meyer Court Associates. Joe Clark is here to speak on their behalf as well. It's for further development of the financial district with the addition of residential at the upper levels. It supports what we're doing at 10 Light Street. It provides a garage for the 420 residences we're about to open up at 10 Light Street, and fulfills the urban development plan. We've met with Patricia outside a few moments ago and talked about the inclusion of historic placards on the building, which would indicate prior use, other historic structures that have been on the property in the past, and would be glad to include those within the bounds of the project.
Anyone else want to say anything?
Just that, for me,
And
this
state your name for the record, please.
for me, this is a 25-year anniversary. We acquired this property when this was main in Maine in terms of office structures, and our intention was to build more office. It only took 25 years.
And would you state your name, please, for the record?
Right.
State your name.
My name is Joe Clark, and I am the resident developer agent for Meyer Court Associates, and their home address is in Washington, D.C.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ma'am, is there anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, my concern is that this building, going up 33 levels, and all the surrounding area of high-rises next to a building that was founded in 1800, and the building attached to that on Baltimore Street. We're losing the feel of Baltimore City, and the architecture and the structure, and more apartment dwellings in downtown Maryland in a high-rise. There's already 3 empty high-rises close in the proximity there that are empty. And the history, you're losing the history of Maryland by tearing down these historical buildings and the architecture. And building up that high, I would like to see it, I would like to see another meeting on it. I want to meet with the developer. Is it Ur?
Yes.
I would like to meet with Carrie Ur.
Okay. All right. We understand what your desires are. Anything you guys would like to add?
No, we discuss this outside and be glad to meet and review what we're doing with Maryland's largest historic building right across the street, 10 Light Street.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
Just a quick question. Any considerations that any of the units will be reserved for low-income tenants?
Not yet.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that is the end of the 3 o'clock docket. We're going to take a recess for 10 minutes or so and then convene the 5 o'clock docket. matters, there are TV cameras recording this proceeding, at least I think they're recording this proceeding at 5 o'clock. So any devices that you have that buzz or make any other sorts of noise, please turn them off or turn them to silent so it doesn't disturb either the TV recordings or the microphones up here that are used by our court reporter to record the proceedings. We have one zoning case on our docket, which I'm going to call right now, 2014-577, 4003 Elderon Avenue. Sir, state your name, please.
Charles Gray.
And Mr. Gray, you're requesting an postponement?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We'll grant you a postponement, and we'll send you a notice when your case is rescheduled.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, the next case is, we have 3 cases on the docket for stormwater remediation fee. First case is 14-01, 2001 Liberty Heights Avenue. And the appellants will be on this side. The people in opposition to the appellants will be on my right. Yeah, this just brought my attention. We had discussed earlier, these cases all have the same issue. These cases all have the same appellant. So I think what we'd like to do is to consolidate these cases and hear them all at one time. How many people will be providing testimony in these cases?
We have one witness.
You have one witness, and you're?
I'll introduce one witness, but we're mostly going to argue.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
We were wondering if we need to set any time limits, but if you just, that's fine. So we're good there. All right, let me get you all sworn in.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes.
Okay. So these are 3 stormwater remediation fee cases that we've consolidated. It's 2001 Liberty Heights Avenue, 3523 Holmes Avenue, and 3515 Woodbrook Avenue. And it's the Shirai Tefillah congregation, and I know I butchered that.
You sure did. Share it, Tefillah.
Thank you. Would you state your names for the record, please?
Joshua Ambush on behalf of the synagogue Shari Tefillah. Mr. Arnold Cummins.
Arnold Cummins, a member ex officio, Share Tefillah.
I'm Jennifer Kennan with the Ambush Law Firm.
Okay.
On behalf of Shirts Field.
Cheryl Wilson, Baltimore City Department of Law, on behalf of DPW.
Okay, very good.
Oh, I got it.
Cheryl Wilson with the Baltimore City Department of Law, on behalf of DPW, the Department of Public Works.
Jennifer Kent, K-E-N-T, like Superman. Not to, you know.
Come and see you, MMIS.
Did you get, just to make sure we got all the names?
I'm probably gonna have to talk into
And
this.
you can
I'm
put
sorry,
that down.
I've got a cold. Kim Grove with the Baltimore City Department of Public Works.
All right, thank you. Let's start with you.
Okay. First, we have binders that would help the commission. We can,
As a preliminary matter, we did receive the city's opposition in reply. We were able to copy that. So we've actually, I'm not sure there's going to be sufficient binders, but this is our reply to the city's opposition. We have neatly packaged these, our reply, along with just some supplemental exhibits in support. Okay, great. My apologies. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you have an extra?
no, we have. I have to give them all.
Does if not, we can.
We have a member not present today.
Sure. My apologies to.
I have to get my binders, James.
I have another here.
Oh, I have 5 of them.
Oh.
Listen, I don't mind if, we're more than happy just for purposes of convenience, since some of the authority we cite, we're going to be citing to, I know the city has in their binders. If you want to distribute them now, I don't have a problem.
James, what is going to get them?
Okay, great. Okay, great. So, just so you know, for ease of convenience, just a few business matters. In the pocket, there are certain exhibits, we've given you excerpts in the binders. Those are the ones we're going to directly refer to. And I apologize, I have the flu, the cold, so if you
And our
can't hear me,
microphones
just-
pick up from a long way. No, I'm
Okay.
kidding.
I was thinking about a mask, but So our pocket, the pocket of the binder contains a CD of certain exhibits that we are only referring to excerpts, but so that you have them, they are state, exhibits. So you have them on CD if you want to look at them in total. It also, the pocket is the full text of our reply to the city. So you have in writing the points that I'm going to make to you verbally. Tab 1 of the binder is the DPW stormwater remediation fee regulations. Tab 2 is an excerpt of Baltimore City's MS4 restoration and TMDLWIP. The full copy has been submitted on CD. Tab 3 is an excerpt of the the MDA's report of the Stormwater Management Act of 2007. Tab 4 is an Attorney General opinion. I believe the city has also provided you a copy of that. We're going to refer to that. Tab 5 is also an Attorney General opinion from 2011. Tab 6 is Article 36 of the Maryland Declaration of Rights. Tab 7 is a case that we cite in passing that the city does not use control of Anne Arundel County versus Pleasure Cove Yacht Club. And tab 8 is an Idaho case that has held that a fee system, stormwater fee system, similar to the structure that is in Baltimore City, is actually a tax and not a regulatory fee. So with that, I'm more than happy to pause and let you have the city's binders as well, so that
Thank you. Please continue.
Thank you so much. So before we get into the merits of our legal argument, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Shirei Tefillah. It's one of the oldest synagogues in Baltimore City. It was founded in 1920. Its founding board includes David Cordish and Oscar Meyerhoff, who was Joe Meyerhoff's father of the Meyerhoff Symphony Hall. And it's in the Druid Hill Park neighborhood. It's right across the street from the zoo. You may know the building. It's main synagogue. It's beautiful. It's a historic landmark. It's been a historic landmark since 1996. It was used in the Barry Levinson film, the Hustler Project, I believe that's the name of the film. And at its peak, Shirei Tefillah had a membership of about 1,200 members. Today, it's a humble but dedicated synagogue. It has less than 170 members, and its annual expenses estimate around $50,000. However, Shirei Tefillah is continuously struggling to raise these funds. Nevertheless, with such a small core of memberships, with a small, funding base, Shirei Tefillah aims to be an active member in the community. It sees itself as a bridge between the Jewish communities in Druid Hill Park and the African American communities in Druid Hill Park, and it's very active in the Mondawmin Improvement Association. And so that's our client. That's who we're representing today. And Shirei Tefillah, with the utmost respect, wishes to challenge the imposition of stormwater remediation fees on Shirei Tefillah. And it's got two grounds for doing so. One, Shirei Tefillah, and they're independent grounds. One, Shirei Tefillah respectfully submits that although the stormwater remediation fees are termed fees, they're actually in effect an improper property tax. And second, Shirei Tefillah submits that imposing these additional fees on a religious institution is in violation of various state and federal protections, including RLUIPA and Article 36 of the Maryland Declaration of Rights. And so the reply that we've written is in supplement and is in conjunction with Shirei Tefillah's original arguments respectfully submitted to the BMZA and to the DPW. the first thing that I'd like to do is to go through some of the points that we raised in reply. The city maintains that they are authorized to, or DPW is authorized to impose stormwater remediation fees under 4-202.1 of the environmental law article, which absolutely sets forth the right of the city to impose a fee on a stormwater to assess stormwater charges. However, we submit that in practicality, what the city has devised is it's not a fee, and it's very important the use of this term fee. If you look at the statutory scheme designed by the state legislature, if you take the language fee and you compare it to 4-204 of the environmental law article, which deals with stormwater, imposition of stormwater fees in relation to development permits, 4-204 allows cities to impose a quote-unquote system of charges. And the Attorney General points out that this phrase system of charges is a very broad term, and that term system of charges would encompass not only fees but taxes as well. Whereas 4-201.1, the city's enabling statute in essence, only authorizes a fee. So what kind of fee, and importantly, why does this matter? Is because, as you guys know, counties don't have inherent taxing authority. In order for the county to impose a tax, the county has to have some sort of express authorization. So first of all, we submit that the stormwater remediation fees, the system design, they're not a fee. They're not a user fee, and they're not a regulatory fee. So first of all, the Attorney General has explained that stormwater management charges might be based on use in terms of the demand a particular property makes in a stormwater system by relating the amount of the charge to factors such as the impervious surface on the property, which seems to what has happened here. However, the Attorney General also points out in its opinion letter that under typical stormwater management practices, such a formula is unlikely to be a sufficient measure of the service provided to the property to be a user fee in the same sense as a water or a sewer charge. So in essence, if it's a user fee, you are paying, something is metered, and you are giving money for a service that the city directly provides to you. You pay your water bill based on the meter in your water bill. However, based on the type of service that a stormwater system is provided, that is not what happens here. First of all, the city, and if you look, it's Exhibit 3 to what we submitted in June of 2014. The city's business plan admits that, listen, because municipal and state properties are exempt from the stormwater remediation fee, the way they calculate the fee is actually higher than it would be if you were allowed to have these types of properties within the ambit of those that could be charged and those that could be assessed. So for this reason alone, the fee, it can't be like a user fee, because in essence, individuals who are not state or municipal governments are basically paying their share. So it's not like a user fee. It's not like a water fee. It's not like a sewer fee, because I pay for my water. I pay for my sewer. I don't pay for the University of Baltimore's water or sewage. I live right near them, so I don't pay for, as far as I know, hopefully, fingers crossed. Moreover, if you look at, if you look at tab 3 of the binder, some of the documents submitted by MDE, which it discusses the type of fee structure such as that has been implemented by the city. So the city's got it's got a two-pronged system with tiers within these prongs. There's residential single-family units that have tiers based on how many square footage each single-family unit has, and then you have non-residential properties that are also tiered based on how many ERUs the non-residential property has. One ERU is approximately 1,050 square foot of property. So what the MDE has pointed out is that inherently when you have a tiered system like that, your leap in the funding, even if you're looking at impervious area and you're assuming that the measurement of impervious area has something to do with how much you're going to contribute to the stormwater runoff, the leap in the assessment of funding has nothing to do. For instance, a property with with 800, I believe the cutoff for tier 1 of the residential property, for residential properties, the cutoff is 0 to 850 square feet. I'm approximating that. And then at 851 to approximately 1,500 square feet, there's a leap in charges, and that leap in charges, that $15 to $30 or $20 to $25, that doesn't have anything to do with the amount of potential pollution or stormwater runoff that property would contribute to the system. So it can't be a user fee, because the leap in tiers doesn't have anything to do with the amount of pollution that these properties contribute within the tiers. And I'm not pointing that out. I couldn't come up with that on my own. MDE points that out. So not only do you have that properties are expected to sort of foot the bill for state and municipal, because state and municipal properties can't contribute, not only do you have the fact that there's an issue with the financial leaps and tierings, but we also have an issue where, we are measuring impervious surface, but we're not looking, and we're approximating this. We're looking at this, as I'll talk about a little bit later, based on aerial photographs and based on square footage as outlined in SSTAT reports. But we're not actually looking at the pollutant quality of any runoff. We're not looking at where this runoff goes in relation to it. Does it directly go to a sewage system? Here in the case of Shore-to-Philo, any sewage or any stormwater runoff goes to the grass. It's not directly connected to a sewer line. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Sorry. Just gonna. So, in contrast to the city's position where the impervious area, I paid to this contribute to the impervious, based on the impervious area, that it just, in reality, unfortunately, that's not the case. So it can't be a user fee. And moreover, as I'll talk about in a minute, the types of activities, as again the Attorney General points out, a stormwater utility, it's being used to clean up the entire community. It's not like, again, water or sewage, where I'm getting water, I'm paying my water bill because I'm using this water and the city is directly providing me water. The city is using this to fund a variety of projects. Projects that, we're not taking issue with as not necessarily being good for the community. But it has nothing to do with my actual, or the attenuation between those projects and the Shore-to-Philo properties are remotely connected at best. So the next type of fee, so if it's not a user fee, if it's not like a water, if it's not like a sewer fee, it could be a regulatory fee. And in Eastern Diversified Properties versus Montgomery County, the Court of Appeals related the criteria for determining whether a governmental charge is a regulatory fee. And it says a regulatory measure may produce revenue, but in such case, the amount has to be reasonable and have some definite relation to the purpose of the act. The Attorney General expounds on this, and it says the amount of revenue generated by a regulatory fee has to be reasonable and bear some definite relation to the purpose of the regulation. Very similar to the standard articulated in 4-201.1 of the Environmental Law article. In other words, as the Attorney General explains, there has to be an adequate nexus between the charge imposed and the cost of the services of the property assessed, and the revenue must be appropriately earmarked as to substantially benefit that property. And that's the key word I'd like you to focus on, is to substantially benefit that property. I've already talked in great detail about how the fee, how measuring impervious surface is not necessarily, or the city's measurement of impervious surface here is not necessarily directly linked to, again, the property's contribution to the stormwater fund. But I think it's also important to talk a little bit about, again, the projects that the stormwater fund is being used to fund. So first of all, there's the MS4 permit, which is, the city's obligations under the Federal Clean Water Act. And so keep in mind that the obligation that the city has under the Federal Clean Water Act in terms of cleaning up impervious surface, we're cleaning up, I'm theoretically, assuming arguendo, I'm contributing this pollution, so now I'm paying for the city to clean it all up, right? No. The only thing that the city has to do under the Federal Clean Water Act is clean up 20% of the impervious surface. So we're not even dealing, the fees aren't even one part of those fees aren't even being used for the entire problem at issue here. Secondly, again, if you look at their business projects, the city, is using this for a variety of things that have, again, nothing to do with the properties owned by Charest Filot, including facility greening projects at local schools and interior parks, environmental site project development in Cherry Hill and the Butchers Hills neighborhood, and addressing chronic safety concerns and mechanical breakdowns at the Highlandtown Stormwater Pumping Station. So the stormwater remediation fee isn't even it's not a fee. There's no direct benefit that's being directly provided by this fee to the city's property. I mean, not to the city's, pardon me, to Charest Filot's properties. And, we raised this briefly in our letter, but Eastern Diversified Properties, at least in terms of the analysis, is it a fee? Is it a tax? What is it? We think it's pretty on point here. In Eastern Diversified, a developer challenged the assessment of a development impact fee by Montgomery County as being an improper tax. Montgomery County said, well, it's a fee, and the only reason we're exercising our authority to impose this fee under the police power. And so what the Court of Appeals really had to do, the heart of Eastern Diversified, was to figure out, all right, they say it's a fee, but is it really a fee? And what the Court of Appeals really looked at, it said, okay, if it was a regulatory fee, again, there'd be a link between the money imposed and the services to the property. There would be, you would be paying for something that really would be connected and given to you. And they said, look at the wide area that this fee is really covering. It's covering roads that are nowhere near the site that's being proposed to be developed. And because the geographic area is so wide, and because it's really looking towards community improvement, this can't be a fee, it's a tax. And so what kind of tax it was, that was left for another day in Waters Landing. But the court held that it was a tax, and that the city, because it was using its police power, was without authority to impose such a tax. And you have a similar situation here. Now, the city says that the city in its reply to us has said that Eastern Development has been superseded by Waters Landing. That holding, that analysis of how do you figure out whether something's a fee or whether something's a tax, that is still good law. What happened afterwards is that Montgomery County said, okay, well, we'll pass legislation saying that we can make this a tax. And so they passed legislation authorizing a development impact tax. And then the question was, well, is it an excise tax or is it a property tax? And that's the second question that the Court of Appeals had to reckon with. So it's still good law. It's still really helpful in figuring out, listen, what's going on here is not the type of regulatory or user fee that's authorized by 2-201.1 of the 4-201.1 of the environmental law article. It's not. Instead, we respectfully submit what's happened here is that this is what the city is imposing an improper tax. And we believe that it's an improper property tax. Weaver versus Prince George's County tells us what do we need to look at in order to figure out if we believe that it's a tax. How do we figure out that what kind of tax is it? Is it an ad valorem property tax? Is it an excise tax? So we know that if we want to figure out if it's a property tax, and this starts on pages 6 and 7 of the reply, we've got to look at how it's assessed. Is it assessed on the valuation or on the use of the property? And then also very importantly, what are the implications if you fail to pay this type of revenue? If it becomes a lien on the property, then this is a very strong indication that it's a property tax. And that's what happens under the code here. If you fail to pay your stormwater fee, it becomes a lien on the property that's subject to the stormwater fee. And the way that these stormwater fees are assessed, how do we figure out impervious surface? Well, we look at something that's pre-existent, that's inherent to the property, and we do that by SDAT records of tax assessors. And we also look at they also look at aerial photographs too. And so, as Weaver versus Prince George's County explains, it's not like there's a bright line in the sun when we're trying to figure out how do we know whether a tax relates to the use of the property or just an inherent valuation of the property itself. but we can look at the types of cases that the Court of Appeals has said, all right, well, you know, this is a tax. For instance, in Weaver, it was a tax based on whether or not this was a multi-family home. It was something that had been built, something that people were actually using in the present in terms of the property. It was not a pre-existing condition on the property. Nobody had to look at SDAT to look at that. It was an actual active use of the property. Secondly, we can also look at that, as I said, that development impact tax in Waters Landing, the epilogue to Eastern Division properties. And the Court of Appeals in that case said, all right, this is an excise tax. Why is it an excise tax? Because you are choosing to develop the property. You are going, you are applying for this permit, and you don't have to develop the property, but you are going to develop this property, so therefore it's an excise tax. Here, the impervious surface, whatever's going on in this property, this was decided long before the city decided to use this type of measurement to impose stormwater remediation fees. So we submit, and again, most importantly, this becomes a lien on the property. It becomes much like a property tax operates. It's a lien on the property.
Are you saying because a charge can result on a lien in the property, it becomes a tax?
Well, that's one of the factors that the Court of Appeals looks at. If they fail to pay the property tax, the city's code directs that it should become a lien on the property.
If you fail to clean a yard, you get a lien on your property. The city will clean it, charge you for that service, and then lien your property if you don't pay it. Do you see a distinction?
Well, I think here again, what you're doing, a stormwater remediation fee, the fees that they're looking at it's assessed in relation to something that's calculated by SDAT, and something that they're also looking at for photographs as a part of a composition of the property. And based on that so you have something, so rather than, again, you're failing to clean your yard, here you've got something that this is inherently part of the property. And then independently of that, I'm not paying for something you're assessing on me that's inherently part of the property, and I'm being assessed a property tax. I'm being assessed a lien on that property because of of this additional charge, we'll call it a charge for right now, that you're imposing that's just part of the property. So it's different than, me failing to clean up my yard.
Unpaid water assessments also result in a lien on the property.
And again, but again, that is true. And what I would say, there is Court of Appeals precedent that talks about, they are similar, they're utilities, they're similar to taxes. But again, here, your water bill is based on your use of something. It's a user fee, it's metered. Here, again, you've got something that's based on just the inherent condition of the property. And the tax that's being assessed is based on the impervious area of the property. So failure, and it results on a lien of that property, of the property that is subject to the stormwater remediation fee. And the court, and the Court of Appeals really, it's an and analysis. The Court of Appeals looks at it like, okay, I got to figure out, is it use or is it inherent value of the property, and then whether or not a property tax is imposed on that property. That's a separate distinction. So in Waters Landing, the developer tried to argue, hey, I get a lien on the property because I failed to, pay this fee. And the Court of Appeals actually said, no. It's not a lien on that specific property. It's a lien on all property that the charter or that the Montgomery County Ordinance imposes. Whereas here, clearly within the ambit of the second prong of the test, failure to pay the property's stormwater remediation assessment results in a lien on that property. So I think you've got both of them here. And even assuming arguendo that it is, again, simply for the sake of argument, let's say that it's an excise tax. It's based on the use of the property. 4-201.1 doesn't authorize an excise tax, and none of the general taxing provisions that the city cites to in its charter can provide the authority for the city to impose this tax on its residents. So that's the first prong of our argument. So basically, we say that it's an improper property tax, and sure, it's fee low because it's a religious institution. It's exempt from paying property taxes, and so therefore, we we're entitled because it's a property tax, we're entitled to an exemption, a blanket exemption based on that. And then, again, even if it isn't, we still maintain, again, respectfully, that it's an improper excise tax and that the city is without authority to impose this excise tax. And then what I really want to talk about, just briefly, and I know I've gone on at length, we've raised Hobby Lobby. I know the contraception mandate. How in the world does that have anything in the world to do with stormwater remediation fees? Well, Hobby Lobby is a decision that, again, deals with the contraception mandate. Hobby Lobby said we have a sincere religious belief that we shouldn't have to opt out of this. We shouldn't have to pay the fees associated with opting out of this under the RFRA, which is the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. And the RFRA, and an act called RLUIPA, which is the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Person Act, the language that the Court of Appeals analyzed in Hobby Lobby and the RFRA and RLUIPA are very similar. So we think that the analysis that the Court of Appeals, my apologies, that the Supreme Court used in Hobby Lobby may be helpful to you in just sort of figuring out, what rights are, what independent First Amendment Article 36 rights or RLUIPA rights are burdened here by the additional imposition of a fee on the city's religious structure, and not on the city, on Sharia Tefillah's religious structure, on a religious structure that I might add that they built because, the Torah says you build a grand religious structure. You build something that's big, you build something that's beautiful. Religious structures that they use as synagogues, as a parking lot for their synagogues. And this, what we really want to emphasize here is that in contrast to certain Court of Appeals precedent, when you're looking at precedent under RLUIPA, the Supreme Court has really emphasized that if something is unduly expensive, if what the government is imposing is just going to cost you, the institution, a lot of money, that can be a substantial burden prohibited by RLUIPA, which is independent of the First Amendment. RLUIPA and the First Amendment exist in two different worlds. And that tests the holding of Hobby Lobby because, again, Hobby Lobby and Conestoga, they could have, there was an alternative. They could have opted out. They could have paid a ton of fees, and the Supreme Court said, no, that's actually a substantial burden on prohibiting you on the free exercise of religion because it's expensive. And so we want to respectfully submit that, the monetary considerations that a synagogue would have to pay, the expense of, again, complying with the stormwater remediation fee, that's something that's relevant and that you can consider, and that is certainly a viable part of the RLUIPA analysis. The other,
how much is I'm curious to see how would you tie the dollar to a substantial burden? What is the dollar fee here?
The dollar fee here, so they do qualify. So right now they've qualified for the religious credit, and this might be a little embarrassing. My apologies. Don't know these figures. I will say that
just give me a ballpark.
A ballpark figure. Hold on, I've got to think about it. I want to say that it went down from 75. I'm so sorry. Let me. Do you mind if I confer with the client?
Sure, go ahead.
It's a base. I apologize. So my client is estimating that at least before the reduction, they were paying $600 a quarter. And what I would say is,
after reduction, do we have how much?
It would have gone down to I think they're paying, if I recall, $75 for 2001. They're still paying the base. So there's 2001 Liberty Heights Avenue, which is the main building, and then there's 3523, which is their secondary synagogue, which can't qualify for any sort of reduction in credit because it would go below the 1 ERU minimum. And then the parking lot was denied in total. So they're still paying the full price for that because it's not within one of the city's statutory exceptions. But I would say proportionally.
And your position is that amount imposes a substantial burden?
Well, because proportionally, as I mentioned before, it's a small synagogue. It's, it struggles. It's got a very modest budget for a synagogue of 120 members. Yeah, absolutely. When this additional monetary fees. And again, it's being imposed simply because, of the way, not because, but it's being proposed in relation to the buildings that they have designed as a synagogue. This beautiful grand building and this.
Are you arguing that the exemption applies only because of the religious institution, or are you arguing that this would apply to all tax exempt institutions?
Well, the tax credit, so there's two, my understanding, they applied for a specific tax credit, which is available to religious institutions. That tax credit that the city has set up is not available to other nonprofits. That's the city. Whether or not something substantially burdens religion, RLUIPA, the First Amendment, Article 36 of the Maryland Declaration of Rights, those apply to religious institutions. And again, we don't think the board needs to be writing laws for everybody, so we're arguing as it applies to Shirei Tefillah, a religious institution. So, and finally, we just want to clarify, one point. I will admit, our initial letter blanketly referenced the Maryland Declaration of Rights, and I do want to say that in terms of our religious argument, we are specifically respectfully referring you to Article 36 of the Maryland Declaration of Rights, which is, it does not track the language of the First Amendment, and indeed, the Court of Appeals has noted, this pre-exists the First Amendment. Maryland has always provided broad protections for the First Amendment. So we suggest that the analysis of Hobby Lobby might be very helpful to you in interpreting Article 36 of the Maryland Declaration of Rights. And I will mention, just finally, the city mentions that, as a general matter, they say it generally, that the Maryland Declaration of Rights is supposed to be read in parliamentary with the federal Constitution. The Court of Appeals has never held that in this case, or in the case of Article 36. And so, we're respectfully knocking on the door and saying, listen, given Maryland's long history of religious tolerance, we believe that Article 36 provides broader protections than the First Amendment. And on those, barring any further questions, I respectfully rest. Can I reserve a little bit amount of time for rebuttal? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Counsel?
Yes. I plan to respond to each element of her argument, but before I do, I'd like to ask Kim Grove, who is the Chief of Compliance and Laboratories for DPW, to come up and give everyone a short background on the ordinance.
Good evening. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Kim Grove, and I am the Chief of the Office of Compliance and Laboratories, but last year I was the Chief of the Surface Water Management Division, which was responsible for being a part of the team to, number one, develop the initial legislation that was put before the City Council. I was responsible for helping with the communications in our public hearings that were done during the City Council hearings. I supervised the Credit Program Task Force. Also assisted with the preparation of the rules and regulations and the guidance documents that were available online and to the public during this whole point. There's already been a lot of talk about the stormwater management, so I feel like half of my notes are already gone. But just to let you know that when we're talking about stormwater management, there's two prongs. One is obviously public safety related to flood control. That's our initial stormwater management. The other part is regarding water quality and improving those qualities of water. In the city, we have a separate system from stormwater versus our wastewater, but it's basically the same thing. It's collecting it off the properties and then treating it in some way so that the quality of water is in a better state to, excuse me. Would you like another one? Okay. So that's in a better state than the way that we've received it. The difference is that instead of it going to 2 treatment plants like what we have for wastewater, it goes to over 1,100 outfalls. So obviously we can't approach it in that same way of having a central treatment process. We do have an NPDES permit. That's a National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. And the NPDES permit for our stormwater system is an MS4 permit. The NPDES permit for our, we also have them for our wastewater. There are other NPDES permits related to construction, but they all come into the same thing, which is to treat the water and return it back to our streams and our Chesapeake Bay so that it can return it as a natural resource for more jobs and more food basically return it back to being a natural resource. The biggest driver on our current MS4 permit is the Chesapeake Bay TMDL, which is to reduce the amount of pollutants related to nutrients, which is nitrogen and phosphorus, and sediment. And a lot of the work that has already been done at the federal level on a large scale, because this TMDL is related to 6 other states in the United States and DC. It's all to definitely improve our waters in the Chesapeake Bay, and we can all agree that that's going to be an improvement for the city. But when all the work was done, impervious area has been a consistent metric. It's used in determining runoff, especially for the rational method, but it's also in the state guidance documents for looking at water quality volume. They look specifically at impervious area. When we were looking at what we wanted to use for a metric, we used certain criteria. One that would be simple and objective to measure and also to understand, and that fell in place with this. I mentioned before that we had a credit task force, and looking at the credit program that basically would give the ratepayer the control of their rate by either doing things on their property or in consideration that the city has a lot of row houses that basically go from property corner to property corner, allowing for a participation credit so that the individual property owner could still be a part of the solution by doing things to reduce pollutants that would ultimately end up in the Chesapeake Bay. So we looked for something simple, objectionable, and I do want to point out that while we do use the aerial photos, we do allow any of the ratepayers to submit documentation like a survey if they wanted to contest what their measurement was. There are several things that we looked at for the credit program, such as on-site treatment, looking if the water comes off their property and goes more than 75 feet to be considered for a non-rooftop disconnect, which is what the state allows for a treatment practice. There are several things that we put in there. We also allowed in our credit program that organization members could be allowed to donate certain fee reductions, especially if they were participating in things. So it was a thoughtful program that was consistent with the consistent with the conditions that we had here in the city, being an ultra-urban established city. That's it.
What we need to decide today are 3 questions. The first question, is the stormwater remediation fee ordinance a property tax? The second question, is the stormwater remediation fee ordinance a land use regulation? And the third question is, does the ordinance violate appellant's constitutional right to practice its religious beliefs? In other words, does it violate the First Amendment of the Constitution? Courts in Maryland all agree that a property tax, in order to be considered a property tax, must be based on the assessed value of the property. The stormwater remediation fee is based on the square footage of impervious surface, because that is what will contribute to runoff, which impacts the stormwater system. It is not a property tax. Second, well, okay, so now it's not a property tax and it is not illegal under the state statute exempting religious organizations from property tax. The next item for fees that the appellant brought up was it's improper user fee. It's not really a user fee, they say. It's some other kind of tax, perhaps an excise tax, and the city is not authorized to impose such a tax. First of all, the city is authorized to impose such a tax. In the charter, the city is granted the power to tax to the same extent as the state of Maryland, or could exercise said power within the limits of Baltimore City as part of its general taxing power. So if it were an excise tax, it would be authorized. However, the city, according to the statute, has called this a stormwater remediation fee. Not only because we were told to call it that, but because MDE's guidance document set forth the elements of that user fee, and those correspond with what our user fee is. What the MDE's guidance document says is that set charges that are paid by the user of a stormwater system that reflect the extent to which each user contributes runoff to the system. The charges bear a substantial relationship to the cost of the service provided. The rate structure shall be fair and equitable, simple and easy to administer, and generate sufficient revenue to fund all necessary utility activities. We believe that the city's user fee is a user fee, but it doesn't matter. A user fee or excise tax is still valid and still legal. The second argument was, although the appellant didn't bring it up in this order and really didn't go into depth on this, but did mention that RLUIPA has been violated. In order to be considered under RLUIPA, it's a Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, you would have to be infringing on some type of land use regulation. You would have had to be adjudicating something based on an application under the zoning code or site plan review, or see, there are several different things that are zoning related. But however, the stormwater remediation fee does not fall under the zoning code. It is under the city code, Article 27, and has nothing to do with zoning regulation. It is not a zoning regulation, so it doesn't fall within RLUIPA at all. So that argument can't be validated, and we don't need to go further on that one. And the third argument is that this stormwater remediation fee is unconstitutional because it puts a substantial burden on the exercise or practice of appellant's religious beliefs. Now, the controlling cases in First Amendment jurisprudence all rely upon what's called the Smith test. And that's a two-part test. And the test, here are the two parts. If the ordinance is neutral, in other words, the object of the ordinance does not infringe upon or restrict religious practices. Now, appellant tried to say that it does and that we're trying to assess a fee based on their religious structures, which isn't true. We're basing our fee on stormwater, on impervious surface. So there, in no way does this law infringe upon or restrict religious practice. That's the neutral aspect. The second element, generally applicable. Is this law generally applicable? It does not selectively impose a burden on the conduct that's motivated by religious belief. Though no way does this ordinance impose a burden on some action or activity related to religious beliefs or exercise. So it is a constitutional ordinance. Appellant brought up the Hobby Lobby case. That was decided under RFRA. That RFRA, Religious Freedom, it's not coming into my mind, Religious Freedom and Restoration Act. So that act has been found not to apply to states. So when the Supreme Court ruled under RFRA, it was ruling on a federal act. It was the Obama ACA. That's the act that they were referring to, so they could apply RFRA. RFRA doesn't apply here. RLUIPA applies here, but only to land use and to institutionalized persons. And as we have seen, this is not a land use regulation. So that comparison to Hobby Lobby doesn't work. However, what's interesting in Hobby Lobby and quite a few other cases is that across the board, they find general fees or taxes to raise revenue for government services to be unassailable. There's not one case where they have found them unconstitutional unless they were specifically targeted to harm or impede religious practice. So we have a Social Security case where the Supreme Court said to the Amish, you cannot get out of paying Social Security taxes. Even if you don't believe in it or you don't need it, you have to pay it. And in Lee as well, they said that as well. Let's see, here we are. where did I put that? Lee. Okay. The state may justify a limitation on religious liberty by showing that it is essential to accomplish an overriding governmental interest. Because the broad public interest in maintaining a sound tax system is of such high order, religious belief in conflict with the payment of taxes affords no basis for resisting the tax. There's nothing, no belief will let you get out of paying a generally applicable tax. And this is a generally applicable tax. Now, the appellant did mention that there are some exemptions. So there's some broad exemptions for the state government, city property, and volunteer fire departments. They don't have to pay the stormwater remediation fee. It's similar to property tax exemptions, if you think about it. Religious organizations and charitable nonprofits don't pay property tax. And guess what? We get to make up the difference. All of us taxpayers have to make up for their lack of paying the tax. So there's no difference between these two. Yes, we are exempting some other organizations, and somebody else picks up the burden. So it's not unconstitutional, and it's allowed. The only time a court would really, like I said, look at something closely and analyze it under a strict scrutiny standard is if you specifically, and there is a case where they banned the use of peyote in religious services, and specifically because one church wanted it, they made it illegal to use in religious practices. They could have made it illegal across the board for everybody, and it wouldn't have violated the Constitution. I think there was one other thing that came up that was worth mentioning. Let's see. Oh, for example, the other argument was that our fees that are based on square footage of impervious surface don't really reflect the benefit that their properties are receiving from the fee. And then appellant compared that to, say, water. So you get water into your home, and it's based on how much water you use. But what they're forgetting is that part of the water system is testing the water, containing the water, protecting the watershed, the pipes, the maintenance, all of that is for public use. So a huge part of every fee is much more than what meets the eye. But just because of all those components of a fee don't directly benefit appellant doesn't mean it's not a valid fee. It's the same for the sewage fee. The sewage that goes from their property, that's a small part of it. Who's going to maintain all the pipes, the wastewater treatment plant? There's so many aspects that I don't even know. I could probably give you a 2-page list for each of these systems are very extensive. And that doesn't mean that every single component of that system has to directly benefit me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just
A few minutes?
Just a few, I swear. Not if you guys don't shut me up my cough well. So I just want to respond just to a couple of the city's points, sort of backwards in the order in the way that council raised them. One, she mentioned that, we're tax exempt and taxpayers have to make up the difference because the state has deemed it fit to exempt us from paying property taxes. But in contrast here, you actually have an express admission by the city that the stormwater remediation fees that they are assessing on individuals, folks like you and me, the federal government, that fee is higher because state and municipal governments are exempt from paying the stormwater remediation fee. There's a direct link here that regardless of impervious area, perhaps it is I believe they use the word, a simple, objective way to measure, potential stormwater runoff. Regardless, that fee, the fee that they're linking to it, is higher because there is a whole class of individuals who are not paying. The other thing is, again, yes, maybe part of my water fee might go to maintenance of the water system, but how the city is calculating it, how they're looking at it, there's a meter. There's something that says I've pumped, I've used X amount of gallons of water, and so yeah, I'm paying for that. And part part of what I'm paying for is, part of that fee might be going towards maintenance of the system, but it's still based on something I actually use. And there's a much more direct connection between what I've used in water or sewage than here, which in essence is I'm paying a fee. And as the Attorney General mentions as to why it's a stormwater fee is not a traditional user fee, it's really going to benefit the entire community. My fee is benefiting everyone. And potentially maybe, we're not really sure, but it may be benefiting me as well. The other thing, just briefly touching on RLUIPA and the RFRA, the test under RLUIPA and the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, it's the same. And RLUIPA isn't just limited to zoning laws, it's limiting to landmarking laws. Listen, this is a law that directly impacts the city's it directly impacts Charades Filo's property. So it doesn't necessarily have to just be a zoning law. And we're not talking about, the city also mentions cases, they mention the Lee case, which is the Amish case, where, the Supreme Court in that instance actually found that, they were substantially burdening the Amish, but they looked at the very complex system of Social Security taxes, and they said in that instance, you know what, you're being substantially burdened, and this is a pre-Hobby Lobby case, and it's it's not in the ambit of RLUIPA. And they say, yeah, because of this complex system of Social Security taxes, looking at the large federal tax system, here we have something that the city is saying is not a tax, and as I went into in great detail, it's not, we're looking at a fee that is not necessary, that A, we don't think is a fee, and B, is not directly connected to the services that, are directly provided to the property. So you don't have the same sort of interest as Social Security, or protecting the IRS or anything like that. And so that's really what we have to say. We thank you so much for your time. We thank the city for their time. Do you guys have any further questions? The one thing that, I will say, there's been, one final thing. There's, been talk that, we didn't expressly say, it is directly, the triggering inputs here, how do you get the stormwater runoff? It's through rain. And one thing that the stormwater fee doesn't take into consideration is, well, what happens if there's a drought? Do we get a rebate? So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Any questions from the board? Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And I think that concludes the 5 o'clock docket. Off the record.
Thank you.
Where do we start?
I can tell you, I need to read this stuff.
Well, so, yeah, that's it. We're hearing.
If you want to stay 30 seconds, you'll probably hear that we're not going to make a decision today.
Oh, okay.
I got to read this. I'm just not comfortable making decisions when I spend more time on this stuff. Do you agree? We're not going to make a decision on this today. We're not.
The judge has chambers, right?
Yeah. I'm just not ready to